Hi all, Lee here. So the previous video I glued this neck together to put the fretboard on the neck. The next step was to draw out the shape of the neck, get the dimensions in there, and then start cutting it out, sanding it down. Obviously I've got my two jigs to use, which we'll see later on. But let me bring the camera a bit closer. I've already drawn on there using the neck template. So what's really important is obviously because you're drawing inside of a template, that means it's going to be slightly undersized. So you really want a very sharp pencil and put it right into the very edge of the template when you draw it out. And you always have to remember to cut on the outside of that line to make sure it stays big enough. Because obviously in the in the body, when I routed out the neck pocket, what happens is the router bit goes to the very edge of this, and if you cut into your line that you've drawn out, it's actually going to be like 0.5 millimeter undersized, and it will just be a little too loose. So that's the only important thing to remember. Really sharp pencil. When you put the template on, make sure you put this sharp pencil right into the edge as close as you can, and then when you draw the lines down the neck, you can always make sure to try and put them a little bit further out. So that should make it the roughly 57 millimeters I need at this end. So let's take a closer look now. So hopefully if I can get that in the light, you'll be able to see that. So as you can see, that vertical line is actually the 24th fret. This is going to be a 24 fret layout. And I put the template over that just to make sure the last fret is just inside the curve of the neck mounting shape. And of course at the other end, hopefully you can see that. It's quite hard, but I've actually drawn the headstock shape on as well, and it goes down to a 43 millimeter nut. So they're all the dimensions. I've got the everything drawn out. So all that's left to do now is very carefully cut it out on my bandsaw. So that would be the next step. Let's get on with that and we'll start cutting this out slowly but surely, and I have to really make sure I don't go inside that line at all. So I'm getting really close to the line now. It's probably a bit hard to see. I think you can see the lines on there. So what I do is obviously the body end is the most important part for squareness because it has to fit into the cavity for the neck socket. So the way I get down to the line is I actually just stick a piece of sandpaper down on a flat surface on my worktop, and then I actually do it manually. So all I need to do is just rub this down, keeping it square, and just testing it against the body until it fits in a nice, snug, tight fit. So I'll carry on and doing that now. Right, so let's just check. We're getting very close. It's very almost there. So a couple more swipes across the sandpaper, and I think that should go in nicely, nice and tight. Couple more goes, and I think we're there. Right, let's give this a go. Excellent. That is perfect. Nice and tight, but slid in well. Oh, I'm so pleased with that. Spot on. So with that done, The next step is going to, what shall I do next? What did I put as my order of operations? So I think it's the neck profile jig next. So now I know this is all nice and square. I'll put some fret markings on here again, just so I know where to cut. But then I'll start shaping the neck in the jig. So let's go and move on to that. So I've centered the neck in the jig. I've already checked the center line and just tested it just to make sure it is centered correctly. The way I've stuck the neck in here is just with double-sided tape. I find double-sided tape so important. I think it's carpet tape, it might be called. But I use it so often to try and stick things and make things firm, and this is really stuck on firm into this jig. So the idea is I just turn on the router and then I just rock this back and forth as I move down the neck, slowly cutting the carve out based upon the cams at either end. If you want to see my video on how I made this jig, there's another video for it on my channel, so take a look for that. So I'm not using this jig to finish the neck. That's quite important. This is the first proper test I've done with it. I've done lots of test cuts just to test that it works and it brings out a shape that I like the look of. But this prototype of my own design guitar is the first time I've sort of really used it in anger. So I'm not going to finish it with this. I'm going to finish the neck on the sander, but I want to get the main profile down with this jig. So I'm not going to go all the way. I'm going to leave a bit of meat on the neck so I can hand finish it. Because I'm still not entirely sure if it's set up correctly. But once I've used it a few times and I'm comfortable with it, then I'll start almost finishing the neck with this jig, and then it only requires light sanding just to finish it. But for now, let's get on. So I'll start from one end. I'll just turn it on, rock the neck back and forth, move it the length of the router bit, rock it back and forth, and I'll just do that the whole length. So let's do that now. So that's the neck now carved. I'm quite pleased with that. I still need to go over this with finer sandpaper before it's oiled, but of course there's still a few things that we need to do with the neck. So I'm pleased how it's turned out so far. The next step is I'm going to put the frets, or at least mark where the frets should go. And then I'm going to cut the fret slots before I radius the fretboard. The reason I say that is I do remember last time I tried to draw on a pre-radiused fretboard to put the frets on, it was quite awkward to get a nice straight line on the curved surface. So I figure what I want to do is I'll put the lines on, cut the fret slots first, and then once I've radiused, I'll just finish the fret slots off, but I'll already have marks in the center. Because the radiusing won't go as deep in the center as the fret slot itself. So that's the order I'm going to do things. So let's start drawing on the fret markers. Remember, it's a 25-inch radius, 24 fret. So let's do that now. So it's quite simple. All I'm going to do is, obviously, I've printed out the fret distance measurements for a 25-inch scale length. So it's just a matter of putting on the nut and then putting the measurements on and drawing the lines on there. The way I'm actually going to do that is I'm going to put the ruler along the top edge and the bottom edge, and I'm going to put a mark where each fret should go along both edges and then join the dots, and that way I know it's perfectly square. because obviously I probably should have done this while the neck was still a square piece of wood, because then I could have just used the square to get perfectly straight lines along there. But now I've already carved the neck, I can't do that anymore. So the easiest way, I think, is to just put the dots along each edge and then join the dots up. So let's do that. Okay, a slight change of plan. Before I put the fret marks in, instead of putting this ruler against the nut line, I'm actually going to saw the edge of the nut in first, and then I've got a really accurate line that I can then measure against, because I really don't want to get that wrong. So let me put a first saw in the front edge of the nut, and then we'll get on with measuring up and drawing the lines. So that's much better. Now I've got a definite line to put the fret markers in, and that means I know that everything is square to the nut. So let's do that. So my technique for cutting these, the fret slots straight, is I just use a ruler against the line. I'm sure there's a tool out there that would make this much better, but I don't own one, so this will have to do for now. I'll probably look into purchasing something. There must be something available to put accurate fret slots in. But this is good enough for now, so let's start with the first fret and we'll work along and get these in. I only need to get them started because obviously it's easier to saw without the ruler in the way, but as long as I've got a line that I can put the saw blade back into, it should be fine. So I just want to get them started, that's the main thing. So that should be about it. So if you remember, my main goal for cutting the fret slots now is that I've still got a mark once I've radiused the fretboard, and that will make it much easier just to come in and get to the exact depth I need for the frets. So hopefully I've gone deep enough because this is quite a thick fretboard. And then the next step now will be to radius this and then finish the fret slots properly and start putting the frets in. So let's set up the radius jig and we'll get on and do that next. So quick update, I'm going to bring this video to a close here because I'm not happy with the accuracy of my fretboard radius jig. So off camera, I'm just going to sort of rebuild this to make it a bit better, and then I'll start a new video and we'll kick off with finishing the fretboard. So radiusing the fretboard, putting the frets in and finishing the neck. So sorry about that, but I'll catch you on the next one. Cheers!